need to know more. More.
There has to be. There has to be.
Wait, what? Hello? It's been 2 weeks. 2 weeks and 3 days. Sorry, I need to freaking grapple with get off. I didn't realize how long it had been. Another one is coming your way now. What is up, Bat family? Welcome to a brand new The Batman video, and yeah, that intro, I just realized it's been 2 weeks, 3 days roughly since the last one of these, so I do apologize for that, but I think it's because I thought I did one last week, but really that was to address the whole Batman leaks with the posters and whatnot. So here we are again with another installment. You guys get how this works. If you're brand new here, very quickly, you guys send in questions. We will speculate together back and forth. Your questions get featured in the video, and we just speculate about the Batman and keep the hype alive. And I really love doing this. I love seeing how much you guys love these videos as well, so I'm going to keep them going because, hey, there's always something else to talk about. Believe it or not, there really is. And by the way, I feel like I've had a dose of the drops that the Gotham Health Department are, warning the citizens about during the movie, because I got my first dose of the vaccination today, so a little clap there. But if I disappear during this video, it's because side effects. I blame you, Jonathan Crane. I felt like there was something fishy about that needle. Oh yeah, and one big thank you to the channel members on this channel. Thank you to those who have clicked that button, and my Patreon members appearing on screen. You guys really do help what I do on this channel, and even if you aren't signed up as a channel member or a patron, even a like on this video would go a long way. But let's start with number one, Brick Studios 105. I feel like I answered one of your questions before. That's a familiar name to me. By the way, your videos are a real highlight of my day, but thank you very much, man. That means a lot. I honestly, I wouldn't be here if you weren't watching me, so it's kind of surreal to me. My question is, should this movie flesh out Bruce's relationship with his parents more so this corruption element of the story would be more meaningful? So, yes, in a certain point of view, as they say. No, so yeah, in one aspect, but not necessarily retreading the same beaten path that we've seen in Batman before. So long story short there, we don't need to see them getting gunned down. We don't need the Uncle Ben like rehash thing again and again like we've had in a lot of recent Batman history. Not that I'm complaining about it. I liked seeing the Wayne's death attached to Joker. That was quite a cool way of doing it. Same with BVS and whatnot. But now, when we're talking about fleshing out the parents, I think that should be a part of Bruce's journey, because there's no way they aren't tied into this. I'll hold my hands up if I'm wrong, but 99.8% of every fiber of my being believes through what Matt Reeves said in the DC Fandom panel, which I've got memorized like the back of my freaking ass cheek. Literally, that he said, you know, how does my family tie back to this, when he was talking about the corruption? That was quite an abbreviation from me, but that wouldn't have been said unless it does indeed tie back to either Thomas or Martha or both, you know, Waynes. Now that doesn't necessarily make him out to be a part of the massive Gotham elite, a part of the Court of Owls, if that's going to be like a little subplot that turns into a main plot by the end of the movie for the second movie. Who knows? Like, this is where I'm almost getting tangent-y. But they should definitely flesh it out, whether there's no Court of Owls or not. I think Court of Owls is going to be quite a bit of a subject again in today's video, because there's a lot of questions about that. So regardless, whether there's no Court of Owls or not, Gotham is a corrupt city in of itself. And I think despite Brucey putting them up on a pedestal, they will be corrupt in one way or another. Maybe not to an extreme end, but a way that will kind of make him shook, so to speak. And that will be the whole, you're a part of this too, kind of thing. So yeah, they should flesh it out somehow, but just without, as I said, going down the same beaten path of seeing them die and whatever. It should be kind of, it should be a part of Bruce Wayne's and Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne's Batman detective journey, where he has this absolute kind of revelation that shakes him to his very identity, because that's why he started this mission. Not only is it a criminological experiment, think about why he's doing this. It's because of a big part of it is Mummy and Daddy. So yeah, 100%, and I think it will be done, just very tactfully, very tastefully. if that makes sense. Next question is from the world's greatest detective. Hey Boba, do you think that this interpretation of Bruce Wayne will be similar to what we see in Arkham Origins, where he is most definitely a lot more angry and a much more darker, even in how he talks and interacts with other characters compared to what we see later in the Arkham games in the timeline? Love the vids, they're always so entertaining to brainstorm with you. Thank you so much for watching. So yeah, definitely, I think a lot of people have this vision already, but, you know, through the grapevine and stuff like that, through what's being said, not only is it shown and portrayed in the trailer, but this Batman, I think people, to an extent, actually don't realize how brutal he's going to be. I think there could even be comments about that, and then you're going to get, even when the movie's out, or maybe if it gets highlighted even more in another trailer, you might get that typical media outrage or something. It's like, oh my god, Batman hasn't been this brutal, but you get fans saying, yeah, he is, and he has been, and also the context of where he's at being the most important thing explains how brutal he is. So, yes, I think he's going to be savage, and I mean angry Batman. And I know that's inherent in Batman's character, it's literally his DNA, but as you pointed out yourself, he kind of does, as he goes and unfolds through his journey, in this case the criminological experiment, but, you know, year 4, year 5, way into it, he's still angry Batman. He's still vengeance, as he likes to say, but there is a bit of a toned down aspect to him, which you pointed out, which we know, and he's a lot more brutal usually in his early days. Not that he can't instantly tap into that vein if something happens along the career line, if that makes sense, like losing a Robin, he might go berserk, this, that, and the other. But what I need to isolate here is the Batman we're seeing 1 year, 6 months in, aka year 2, we are going to see many scenes where I think they will even walk the line of killing, but he's still going to have a no-kill rule. I think that will be a predictable part of this movie. That ties into all kinds of early Batman lore anyway, in various stories. I always mention Batman ego. That's obviously something that's getting rehashed a lot in these videos, but, you know, I really do stress you guys to read that, and you'll seriously kind of start to understand a lot more of what I'm spitting out when I talk about stuff like this. So yeah, Robert Pattinson's Batman, I think it won't be a surprise to many, but it will also be a surprise to, I guess like the commoners almost, how brutal he's going to be. But it will tone down as time unfolds. But a big part of this is, A, he's frustrated because his criminological experiment isn't working the way he wants it to. That's literally words from the director himself. B, the murders start happening and he's going to feel powerless. Can you imagine how pissed Bruce is going to be in this film? He's going to be angry. I'm going to start repeating myself now, but prepare yourselves for some savage fight scenes, some savage Batman who... it's excusable because it's a part of his journey. You know, it will tone it down a little bit as time unfolds, but I can't wait. I can't wait to see him go freaking ham. The next question is from Tristan. Considering this film is taking more of a noir approach, do you think it would benefit from a black and white version, similar to how Logan and Zack Snyder's Justice League has done? Also love these videos, can't wait for more. Thank you, man. You know, I chose this question really off the cuff today because I thought, holy crap, yeah. Obviously, I haven't seen the movie, but we have a very good idea over here on this channel of the way things are going to go. And yes, I mean, I can't say if there will or won't be, but I would buy it. Do you know what I mean? I think seeing this movie, especially, as you say, the noir approach is taking in many different factors, some that still may yet be a surprise to us and a pleasant surprise, hopefully. For example, noir monologue of Bruce talking throughout the film, maybe intermittently, like a true throwback to a noir thing. And, you know, also just Batman's introspective commentary. I think we would all love to see that, especially with what Reeves has teased us. So a black and white version with everything like that in mind would be really cool. I know some people don't get black and white versions, and I get that. I mean, you know, it is like a little kind of a niche tasteful thing. Sometimes it's applied to some things which I think aren't as relevant as other things, but I feel like, if any, the Batman could be probably the most relevant. So we'll have to wait and see, but I kind of hope so. That'd be pretty dope. Orange Julius Caesar Salad says, since Matt Reeves seems to love the depth of the Batman universe psychologically, do you think realistic villains like Ventriloquist or Mad Hatter will get any screen time? I would wager, like, you know, it would be more likely for Mad Hatter, for example. You know, I would like to be optimistic in thinking that Matt Reeves will break the mold by maybe doing a character who is a popular character, don't get me wrong, but usually when you come to a trilogy, it's almost typical that they may retread Bane again, which I wouldn't be opposed to. You know, lots of people want Dave Bautista and a proper, you know, adaptation there, or, you know, whoever again. But, like, maybe it is time to do someone who is lesser known, like Ventriloquist or something, or maybe actually tackling Clayface as a main villain. It's just interesting, because there are some villains that I think, maybe it's just because it's what we've been used to seeing, feels like it's easier to tackle in one of these trilogy movies as the main villain. But I would really respect Matt Reeves if he, like, just said, yeah, second villain, Ventriloquist. I think some people would be like, huh? But I would be so for it. Because it's not the easy way out, because, you know, with Bane, you could be like, okay, he comes to the city of the Bat, and he wants to, you know, or another one, Mr. Freeze, who I would really like to see, like Giancarlo Esposito or someone, but imagine the balls that you would have to be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to do a ventriloquist, like, dummy kind of person, and who's running around with Scarface. So it is harder to tackle. The only reason I think it might not be ventriloquist is because I don't know if the whole series is going to be like a murder mystery kind of thing. It can still be noir detective based, even if you don't have like someone like Scarface and ventriloquist running around. So maybe even one of the other lesser known ones, but ultimately we'll have to wait and see there. I feel like there will be an overall arc though, and this will lead into another question that I'm about to get into. But yeah, I would say it's probably more Mad Hatter over ventriloquist, but I really hope one of the other villains who hasn't actually had too much spotlight in an actual main Batman movie before gets some. And very luckily, the next question is kind of what I was just referencing to. I had no idea when this would pop up, but Harrison Jolly says, awesome video, my brother. I love watching these every time they drop. Thank you, my friend. Thank you very much for watching them. How would you feel about a Court of Owls post-credit scene tease? We've kind of spoke about this before, I think, and set them up as a sort of Palpatine-esque overarching villain throughout the trilogy that comes fully into light in movie 3. Yeah. With other villains, this is the important thing, also being in the movie, kind of like Scarecrow in Batman Begins. Perfect example there, because you had multiple antagonists, kind of, as you said, Scarecrow, but also Liam Neeson's Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, however way you want to pronounce it, League of Shadows. So maybe guys like Giancarlo Esposito as Freeze, as sort of the main villain in movie 2 or something. But yeah, with the Court of Owls still floating around maybe in the background, what do I think of that concept? I can't rule it out, totally I can't, because there could be an overarching kind of thing, and, you know, which is the Court of Owls, that would be very easy to weave in with what we know about this film. That's the thing, it's not the Court of Owls aren't a one-movie story, and if it was, it would be a disservice to the potential. That's just a fact. I can't, and I don't see how I could ever retract that comment. Do you know what I mean? The Court of Owls and the City of Owls storyline is something that would be so well fleshed out in 1, 2, and 3. But that would imply that what the Riddler is trying to expose here, albeit through a very crazy way, through murdering people, it's obviously not the way you go about doing it, but that's what's got to, that's what's driven him to this point. We've got teasers on the posters of the Riddler saying, I know what I have to become, and my life has been one big cruel riddle or something. So I don't want people memeing about the Joker comparison. Oh, society drove him to rise up, and, like, it's kind of like that, but, like, you know, Gotham does birth villains to, like, you know, rise up and do something in a villainous way. So maybe through what he's doing there, it exposes the largest thing, Gotham's elite. Maybe you want to chuck Thomas Wayne in there. Maybe you want to chuck Martha in there, who maybe were reluctantly a part of the Court of Owls. Maybe you can't help but dip a toe in the paddling pool of the Court of Owls if you're that kind of in the Gotham elite. And yeah, that might be the revelation we've been speaking of in this video. But I would be desperate to know and want the reassurance that it's not just done in the first movie. And in so doing, it can be like what you proposed and what I think we've proposed here on a channel before, that it doesn't really properly surface until the third and final movie, thus allowing, for example, with your perfect comparison there, Scarecrow in Batman Begins, who was in there, you know, he was floating around. It was very much so a part of the plot, but there was a bigger antagonist, the League of Shadows. So in the second movie of the Batman, you could have, like, Mr. Freeze, as you pointed out, but, you know, things are still fishy and unresolved from Bruce getting to the bottom of the Court of Owls, who are in the shadows and always watching. It's just interesting. It would be an amazing thing to see the Court of Owls in live action. It truly would. The only thing I feel like some fans may have reservations for there is that, okay, that means that can they really bring another villain story to full fruition if they do that? So what I mean is there is, for example, your Batman Begins comparison, Scarecrow wasn't really the heart and soul of the movie, so he wasn't fully actualized like he could have been. So if you do that in this trilogy, if we have the Court of Owls lurking in the background, and yeah, you want to cast a new Mr. Freeze, or maybe even Ventriloquist, or whoever, take your pick. It won't purely be about that story because there's still the web being woven in the background of the Court of Owls that continues on from the Riddler's expose on them in the first movie. So I don't know that, and then, you know, if it can go either way. So I think that would be a cool concept, definitely. I just don't know, you know, that's one of the things we don't know till we know. But I would love for you guys to reply to that. Would you want that storyline being an overall arc throughout the 3 movies, thus also getting other villains spread thin throughout each movie? For example, the Batman Begins comparison with Jonathan Crane being there all while the League of Shadows were doing their thing? Or do you kind of rather not have like an overarching kind of trilogy plot with the Court of Owls lurking there in the background and have each film truly a one and done kind of thing? But, you know, when it comes to trilogies, there usually is some kind of underlying thematic kind of arc. I mean, maybe that will just be it in of itself. Bruce is growing, and that's the arc, you know, and that allows room for like the villains to have their own separate stories in the films. It doesn't have, the arc doesn't have to be one continuous villainous group or organization, if you will, like the Court of Owls. It can be done in other ways, I suppose, but ramble over. I'll leave that one to you guys. Next question is from Giles or Gillies Van. I'm not going to try, but great work on the video. Thank you. Do I think that Arkham is closed down at the beginning of the movie and that Bruce will fund the renovation reopening at the end? What a fantastic idea. Obviously, that's the thing here where it's like, okay, well, I could say to you, maybe it is closed or maybe it isn't. That's the thing. But I would like to weigh in into your perspective a bit more, because one thing we do know about this Gotham is that it's like it's kind of like an abandoned city almost. Don't get me wrong. There's still people living there, businesses kind of trying to flourish there. People live there. But this, you know, through the grapevine and the leaks and whatnot, it's kind of like a city, you know, like the No Man's Land storyline. It's not No Man's Land. The bridges aren't blown and stuff like that. But, like, people tend to stay away from Gotham. And that's, like, a common fact anyway. So it makes me think of things like the asylums. I could easily argue, okay, why would it be closed? Like, I'm sure they've got it open and they have people to take care of. And that is, I want to revisit that in a second. But it is a really cool perspective that things like that in this city that is decaying almost aren't functioning like they should. Like a city should have a ward or an asylum and places, homes for children and stuff like that, because that's been teased in leaks. Orphanages that seem to be completely like scrapped and abandoned. Like, it would be cool if through Bruce trying to bring life into the city again through his criminological experiment, by the end, with it working, you start to see Gotham brighten up, all while still remaining the Gotham we know and love, because it's never really going to have its stink eliminated, so to speak. So that's a really, like, I would say romanticized concept there that I really like the idea of. However, you know, if we do get people like, there's theories and stuff out there like, oh, Joker could be in the first movie, but the thing is he could already be in Arkham, and Joker might be a bigger part to play within the trilogy, but we're talking like 4 to 6 years time from this very recording right now that you're watching of me talking for him to appear. So if you're thinking, oh, too much Joker, that doesn't mean that we're going to get him in a heavy dose. It just means in the first movie, Batman might visit him in Arkham, la-di-da-da, because he might have a connection to the drops, which are very much so a part of the plot line with the Gotham health crisis that's going out. And that's all you see of him. They don't have that romanticized dance back and forth with each other like I've kept spitting out in previous videos, but that will kind of come, you know, like Batman Arkham Origins. Like, Joker was kind of there, but like, when he's like, why did you do that? I love that scene, you know, when Batman saves him. That moment was like a cool catalyst for his obsession. think that kind of injected if the Joker is truly there. So what I'm trying to get to the bottom of there is Arkham could already actually be open, because there might be a few wackos in there like the Joker who might not even be called the Joker. It might just be John Doe. That's the cool thing. Like, I feel like they could be going that direction, which would mean that Arkham isn't closed down, and your core concept of like the, you know, grand reopening at the end is such a good idea. But I would probably say it is open. But that doesn't mean that Bruce at the end wants to add security measures. Maybe Wayne Enterprises want to make sure that Arkham, which was already open during the movie, since Batman, you know, is by the end of the first movie become a bit more Batman, obviously, putting some more people in there, Edward Nashton, the Riddler and whatnot. Maybe he wants to donate some money to, as you kind of say, maybe renovate, refurbish. So it's still open, but maybe he adds extra security measures, which Batman would. You know, he's very kind of involved in I would say, the anatomy of Arkham Asylum. So that would be a cool thing as well. Brilliant comment, and I would love to know your guys' thoughts on that as well. Next question's from Ruse Day Cake. Brucey is becoming quite a celebrity. Thank you for being one of the real ones. Love the videos. Thank you. Anyway, sorry if this has been asked before, and maybe it has, but like, I want to talk about it again. What do you think of Batman losing? How do you feel about it? And what do you think the chances are of it happening? So, I guess what you mean by that is him losing overall, like, by the end of the movie. I don't think that will happen, but losing will happen still. I know that sounds contradictory, so I think ultimately he will be, by the end of the movie, successful in some capacity, but obviously not to a full extent, whether you want to weigh in the revelation of the Court of Owls there being the overall trilogy. Like, he might have just burst through the ceiling, but he's still got a long way to go. Do you know what I mean? So you could say he's not quite fulfilled his criminological experiment, obviously, because, you know, Batman's going to do this for decades and decades. Obviously, I don't know if Robert Pattinson's Bruce quite realizes that yet. I think, you know, this is what Matt Reeves said. He's not getting the results he kind of wants straight away. I think maybe he thought it would be not easier than what he thought it was, because I'm not saying Bruce is that foolish, but you get the vibe of what I'm saying here. So, back to your question, I don't think he will lose. Like, I think he's going to put Riddler away. I think more answers will come out of that, which may lead to the second movie, maybe through post-credit scenes, or even if there is no post-credit scene, just at the end of the movie. But losses will happen. Like, there's this one thing that comes to mind, which I almost don't like. The only thing that I find questionable in the trailer is when Bruce gets shot by a gun right here. I think we're gonna see some fails in this movie. We're gonna see not quite Tobey Maguire Spider-Man going around with his webs in the pajama costume, if you know what I mean. It won't be that level of, like, Raimi cheese, if you know what I mean, even though I love that. But it'll be done very, like, elegantly, but, like, you'll be like, damn, Bruce, that must have hurt. Or, like, oh, he got a punch here. Do you know what I mean? He has bruises around his eyes. Batman takes punches in this film. It's grounded. He's still Batman. He's still trained, but he's only human at the end of the day, even though he's meant to be the best of the best. But that one thing about that scene, man, if that thug aimed just a little bit higher, that cowl isn't BVS cowl. That cowl, like, forget about the cowl. The gun could have just shot through his mouth and out through the back of his head. It's not that I don't like that moment, but it's almost relevant to your question. There's going to be some newbie Pattinson moments, which are going to be big learning curves for Bruce, I think. And, yeah, I just think it's so painful to think in that moment, if that thug, you know, pretend that this bottle of freaking soda, you Americans call it, he shoots him, Pattinson gets shot here on his symbol, and he's like, ugh. But imagine if the gun was raised up a bit, it would have gone... I know. So it's going to be interesting to see if that mistake was shown through Batman. And, you know, he's fighting multiple thugs at that time. You know, the suit's going to get shot. I'm just nitpicking to the point of where if you think the gun was raised up, Batman would be dead, and that really bothers me. But, you know, I do and am completely open to rookie mistakes, because at the end of the day, I'm completely down for a more humanized... Even Batman can make mistakes almost. This is year 2, like, so year 1 year, 6 months in. But you get my point of what I'm trying to say. I think he will be losing in little newbie ways like that. I can't wait to see them because it shows the growth of the character, and it just makes you think, really, like, God, if we've got that shot in the trailer, what the heck happened to him in the first 1 year and 6 months that we haven't seen? I've talked about flashbacks before. Who knows? Are we gonna get like moments where we see him completely break his hip or fracture his wrist, or because he's still making mistakes like that, like to the point of actually getting shot on his suit, where, as I said, he could have got headshotted through the face or the nose. It doesn't even matter if it was here. That cowl isn't good enough to stop it here. So, Jesus, could you imagine what happens in the first 1 year, 6 months? So, yeah, no overall loss, but little losses will happen. And yeah, I think what will happen at the end of the film is it's not so much a loss, but it's like it's not even a victory either. He realizes there's a whole lot more work to do. Next question is from JP De Leon. Would you rather keep the armored suit style or move on to a suit similar to the one we got in BVS? Very good question, because I love so much about the Ben Affleck suit other than the neck, which kind of makes him look, because Ben Affleck's got a neck and he's not chunky, he's just not. So it makes him look like his shoulders go like that, and he's like, I know he can slightly turn his head in that, but I don't like that. It looks great in some angles, but other than that, face on, he looks too much like this. So, I do like the material, but this is the thing. I've always said I'm not so much of an armored Batman guy. I am in the comics and games, it looks cool, but when we're grounding this in reality, and you cast Robert Pattinson, and you want to do something cool, I think the suit we've got now is perfection. The only thing I might slightly change, even though I love the cowl, I love it, is maybe in the other movies, hey, why not just experiment with a chin strap, see what that looks like. Doesn't need it, but like, hey, obviously things got to change in number 2 and number 3. Now, as for the armored bit here, I don't actually... It is armored, but like, it's not like Arkham games, like quadrant of like screen attached to his arm, which provides a Oracle hologram. Do you know what I mean? It's not that level. So the armor that we've got, I think is, I would say is like kind of cool mid-tier stuff. It's not over, exaggerated. It's not in your face. When you look down at the other parts of his armor, he's wearing tactical pants. He's literally got freaking handcuffs on his belt. That's amazing. It's practical, it's realistic, and they're handcuffs. So, like, I don't feel like the overall vibe is too armored. So the fact that the quadrant of the chest, torso piece area, and the abs are armored makes sense. It's not too invasive when you take into the fact that his cowl is leather-esque, and the pants are just like camo military grade riot gear type. So, long story short here, as I usually do, would I rather keep the armored suit style? I'd rather keep that rather than it go into more of a skin-tight Ben Affleck Batman. Now, I do love that. It's very comic accurate at the same time, because a lot of comics, if they don't want to massively over-exaggerate in the art style, the armor to Batman, it does almost look like it's pajama-y, or like, for example, like, a Spider-Man suit. Just something skin-tight almost. But there's debates on whether that's a realistically protective. I know some commenters out there would be like, but what about the Kevlar weavy kind of skin? I know what you mean, but this is furthermore why I feel like we need to maintain the current Batsuit with slight upgrades here and there, maybe like the boots and stuff, I don't know, because it's realistic in every fathomable way. Matt Reeves said, I think they spent like well over a year. I think it was indeed over a year coming up with that. Think about Batsuits. So imagine if you worked on that all the time and that was your job. You could probably come up with so many designs in a few weeks or a few months. Imagine doing that solidly. They did it solidly for like over a year. That's how much thought went into that. And when you assess it in every capacity that you can, it's so realistic, it's so well done, and I don't think it needs to change. And I don't think it will change. Like, literally, I think the only tease we'll get is maybe there's other prototype things being worked on in the Batcave. Maybe they say something about another suit at the end. But I truly do think the Riddler's design won't really change. The Batman design and the suit won't change. And I know I've been ranting for a while now, but yeah, I'll keep the armored suit. I wouldn't mind, by the way, if it went more low profile. But I think this is the most badass, practical, realistic thing that Matt Reeves could ever freaking give us. And it looks awesome. So next question's from Casey, and they say, how do you think they can work Mr. Freeze into a quote-unquote grounded universe. I want him done justice. So this is an interesting, because the way you phrase that makes me think that you don't think that maybe that you don't think they're going to get fantastical at all, and that is not the case. And I'm very confident with that. So all while this is grounded, it doesn't mean that we're not going to get the possibility of an actual, you know, quote-unquote meta-human like Poison Ivy, or maybe something that isn't maybe as realistic as what people think, like Clayface, or maybe, as you say, Mr. Freeze. It's like, can you really be cryogenically in that negative degrees stasis and function in a grounded unit? So the beauty of what Matt Reeves is trying to accomplish here is a blend of what Nolan did with, but not quite that, because Nolan really tried to insert a Batman into our world. That's why Bane, no Venom, you know, so on and so forth, no Lazarus Pit. It's just, there wasn't any, you wouldn't get a Clayface, you just wouldn't. However, this carries over the grounded, as you say, gritty aspects of real life in the ways I even just mentioned about the suit, the fact that he built that car, things back and forth like that. But that doesn't mean in this world they're not going to also try and make things like Mr. Freeze come to life. So I truly believe Mr. Freeze is arguably one of the more quote-unquote fantastical villains that you can really put into this grounded world. Just because they say, oh, cryogenically, and that might not exist in our world. That's something that is technologically almost achievable, and I'm not going to get into research on how that is in today's world, but do you know what I mean? That's something that doesn't require a lot of suspension of disbelief at all, in my opinion, and I feel like Matt Reeves would try and make it as grounded as possible, but totally make it rely on the fact that it also isn't real, like, because it's Mr. Freeze. Do you know what I mean? So this universe, as it's been said, even by Jeffrey Wright, it is grounded, but it will have fantastical aspects as well. I truly do believe that means you can get a Clayface out there in Matt Reeves' world. You can get Poison Ivy out there, but the way everything's shot, the way everything is going to feel also very realistic. It's going to be Batman in real life. I feel like, oh man, it's just so easy to be taken as a fanboy at this point, but I truly do have such conviction in these following words I'm about to speak, and when I say that this will maybe and arguably be the most accurate Batman depiction you could ever bring to live action. Sure, it might not be your favorite, you still might prefer Nolan when all of this is said and done, but if you want to try and bring in Batman the Animated Series, or whatever Batman comics to live action, bring him noir, make him the best detective in the whole world, make his rogues gallery realistic, and I'm not even talking about realistic ones who you can maybe put down to a psychological or mental disorder like the Joker or the Ventriloquist. We are talking Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy being in that world too. If he can achieve the realism and the fantastical and blend 50 and 50 together, which I think he's got to do, how can anything top that in terms of actually adapting Batman? But ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave this video there. I think this has gone on for a decent amount of time, but don't worry, there will be more to come. If you've made it this far in the video, you know what I'm going to say to prove it. Put down with whatever comment you're going to put, hashtag, you're a part of this too. And other than that, I'm just looking forward to reading every single one of your comments, and obviously I'll be hearting every single one that made it to this point of the video. If you want to support me even further, as I said at the beginning of the video, I have a Patreon, which gives you rewards in my Discord server, which reminds me, I have a Discord server, and also, you know, Twitter and stuff like that. That's my most active place. If you want to hang out with me a bit more, you know, I talk about, you know, it's Twitter. I offer my opinion more or less every day on random things. So thank you guys, as always, so much for watching. I really do appreciate your support. Seriously, I do. I love the community that we have here. And I guess I'll hope that you have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you, Bat Family, in the next video. Goodbye.